guess I always felt like it was my destiny to do this. I started playing the piano when I was about 4 years old, and I started singing in the church choir. Both these things I begged my mother to do. She didn't have to push me into it. I started singing in the church choir when I was about 6, and I just always loved it. It was something that I just loved the feeling I got when I got in front of a crowd and heard them cheering, and just the energy. It just felt good to me, and I just wanted to keep feeling it. In my teens, I was performing a lot. I was directing my church choir. I was performing at my high school in the show choir, the talent shows, the school plays, all those things. Wherever I had an opportunity, I performed, and I loved it. I went to University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and I studied English. So I did a lot of reading and writing, a lot of history stuff as well. And yeah, that's what I studied. I didn't want to study music in college. I didn't feel like university music was actually going to help me do what I wanted to do as a musician. And so I took a few classes just to, get a little more theoretical knowledge, but I got most of my experience as a musician outside of the classroom, which I thought was better for me if I wanted to become a pop musician. I directed an a cappella group in college, and I directed a church choir. I started making my own demo recordings with a couple different producers as a solo artist. It got very little attention. Just attention among my college peers more than anything else. But that was a start, and it encouraged me, and it ended up kind of being the basis for whatever I did after college, because those same people that I was friends with in college that came to see my first showcase in Philadelphia, or the people that came to see my first showcase in New York, and that was the beginnings of my fan base, and that really helped kind of propel what I did for the next 5 years after I graduated, up until the point where I actually got a record deal. I guess my job wasn't very normal for an aspiring musician, though it was very normal for a graduate of University of Pennsylvania. I was a management consultant, so basically we were young analysts that would be part of a team of people that would kind of analyze a company, give them advice on the next things they should be doing. And so that's what I did for 3 years. I was still making my demos. I was still performing live, especially in New York, also in Philadelphia. And I always felt like my job at the time was a means to an end. And I thought it was going to end sooner, actually, than it did. I thought I'd be out of there after the first year, and then after the second year, then really after the third year. So even then I didn't have a record deal, but I quit that job and went to a lower intensity job that took only about 20 hours a week and focused more on music. And during that same time, I was working with Kanye West a lot, and we started working on a lot of his recordings and other recordings that he was producing. And so that time period really was a very fertile time period for me as a musician and collaborator with other musicians. I'd worked with Lauryn Hill when I was in college in 1998 for the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. A good friend of mine is a good friend of hers, and she hooked us up. It's pretty simple. She put us in a room together. Lauryn was working on her album, and I just came by and hung out, and I was kind of quiet in the corner. And my friend Tara said, "Johnny, why don't you play some songs for her?" So I did play a couple original songs I've written. And she said, "Why don't you play on the song we're working on right now?" Which happened to be Everything Is Everything, which was a big single from Miseducation. So I played piano on that back in '98. But most of my collaborations came as a result of me knowing Kanye. We met in 2001 at one of my gigs in New York, and he was introduced to me by his cousin, Devon Harris, who was a college buddy of mine. And we met then, and we eventually started working together a few months later. And during this time, this is when I'm still working my management consultant job, but kind of thinking, trying to find a way out. Kanye started helping me produce my demo, and I started helping him do things on his demo as well. I would sing on his demo and play piano and different things like that. His demo became The College Dropout, which of course came out a couple years later to critical acclaim and lots of success. And during that time, while we were working on that, and he was starting to rise as a producer, he would include me on other recordings he was doing. People like Jay-Z, Alicia Keys, Slum Village, Dilated Peoples, Janet Jackson. We even did a remix for Britney Spears. They were big names, but a lot of times it was me working with Kanye, working with them, so I was more working with him than working with the artist. Because a lot of times music is very kind of, it's like compartmentalized in some ways these days because it's so advanced technologically. There's a lot of kind of separate parts that are put together before the artist gets involved. So sometimes we'll make a beat, send it from LA to New York, and the artist will rap on it without us actually being in the same room. So we made the beats for Jay-Z, for instance, in LA while he was in New York, and he recorded his vocals in New York. So those kind of things happen. So a lot of times I was working with Kanye and not the artists themselves. He included me on a lot of the stuff he was doing because I was around, and he doesn't play an instrument. He's kind of a visionary, but he needs other people to help implement what he's doing. And so I was pretty useful because I could play piano and sing. Also during that time, I was still trying to get my own record deal, and he started helping me do that. So he would play my music for A&Rs that he was playing his beats for. He would say, oh, also, by the way, you need to check out John Legend. And so after, a lot of playing the music for people and making more music and a lot of success collaborating with other people, we finally got me a record deal in May of 2004, which I think was a result of all that stuff we did, plus also a result of Kanye's album doing so well and the kind of the buzz and the excitement around that, helping make people curious about what I was doing as well. When we finally got signed to Sony, it felt great. I was excited. It was a whirlwind because as soon as we signed, we wanted to finish the album because it was pretty much already conceptualized, and all it needed to be was re-recorded. And so we recorded it all in about a month and a half. So it was a very quick process from getting signed to recording the album to having a single out. And it was exciting. This was what I wanted. This is what I believed should happen, and it finally did happen. I didn't necessarily say this is what I want to be as an artist. I didn't write it down and kind of say this is my branding and my pitch to the world. But I am what I am, My music is a blend of soul and hip hop and pop, and it's just what it is. And more so, I just figured what collection of songs would be the best representative for me, which means the best songs, but also songs that were relatively cohesive. Songs that explore the ups and downs of relationships, family relationships, romantic relationships, in a very kind of relatable way. It's not overly complex, but it strikes a chord with people. It feels real to people, and I'm not trying to preach to people or anything. I just try to tell stories that feel right to me and that feel right for the song. He was referring to ordinary people when I met him, and he just told me that basically it was a real song, which was rare these days to hear that. Songs with movement, melody, messages that make sense, some sort of structure that makes sense. I think I'm a student of songwriting, and I'm sure he is as well. And so I think that comment was directed toward that. At the end of the day, there's no good reason why anyone should compare myself and Stevie Wonder anytime soon. First of all, it's an honor to have played with him on the BET Award show that I did in the States. And it was an honor whenever people compare us. I think it's a bit premature. I think people are prone to hyperbole especially when they find a new artist that they're excited about, and that's fine. I think it works to my advantage usually. I just go with the flow musically. I let whatever the music is saying to me and dictating to me at the time, let it kind of dictate what it does. And since I think about political things a lot, I imagine I'll be writing more about them. I've written about them before, I just didn't happen to include them on this album. And I imagine that I'll write more, and I imagine that they'll get on some albums eventually. I'm nervous about putting out bad music. If I put out bad music, then that's a problem. If I put out music that comes across too preachy without actually being good music to listen to, then that's a problem. But I'm not worried about putting a message in there that some people won't like. That's not my problem. One of my problems in writing political songs is I don't see things very black and white. I think a lot about issues, but I see them, a lot of them in a very nuanced way. So I like argue with myself and rather than have kind of a strong, like, I hate this or that statement, because there's so many what ifs and but this, but sometimes that. And so sometimes I'd have to harness my own, like, sense of shades of gray to write the song. Actually, it was a nickname that started out just as kind of a inside joke among friends. And it kind of grew to the point where a lot of people were calling me John Legend, people I didn't even know, and more people were knowing me by that than by my real name. And so it just kind of stuck. And then I had to decide whether or not this nickname could actually become a stage name. And, you know, I went through, you know, a lot of kind of back and forth with myself about it, because I knew it was a bit presumptuous. I knew it was a bit daring to do it, but I figured, why not? You know, I want to do this really big, and this name will help me do it big, I think. And I think it all worked out. Life is fun. I'm touring all over the world. That's exciting. I'm doing what I love to do every day, every night, and I'm successful at it. It's just fun. It can be tiring a little bit, a little grueling sometimes, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. This is what I love to do.